A number of years ago, I went hiking with another Franciscan in the East Sioux Park, not too far from Victoria. And it's a pretty strenuous hike as we're going along. And we get halfway through the hike, and I'm all out of water. But that's okay because I brought an orange. My goodness, did I ever savor that orange. But we still have to make our way back to the car, and we're only halfway. And as we get partway to the car, we meet this woman on the trail, and she's making sure we're okay because apparently a lot of people get confused in this park and they get lost. And so she wanted to make sure that we had enough water and that we weren't confused or delusional in any way. But we were okay, and we eventually made it back to the car. Now, the interesting thing is the other Franciscan was supposed to meet somebody at 6 p.m. I was supposed to meet somebody at 7 p.m., and it was 8 p.m., and we still had to make our way to Victoria. We kind of missed out on that one. But the interesting thing is, my goodness, did we ever enjoy when we stopped for something to drink? We've probably all been thirsty at different points in time, and we can somewhat relate with the people in the first reading for the book of Exodus. I mean, these people have been zealous because they've been set free from their slavery, and yet that seems to have wore off in our reading because they are complaining that they don't have water. And in our ingratitude, God shows care for us. God continuously reaches out to us in many different ways to show care and love towards us, even though we complain. Wow, how generous God is to us. But the first thing is that they're going to be nourished from a physical point of view by having water to drink, but they're also going to be assured that the God who led them out of slavery is still with them and providing them with water. Ultimately, living water, that is to say, divine life, that God is present with them. Now, in our gospel reading, Jesus goes to a well at noon, and he meets a woman who comes to the well. Now, that indicates right off the bat that this woman is a social outcast, because nobody goes to a well at noon, that is to say, in the heat of the day. And yet Jesus lets that go and has a conversation with her. But wait a minute. Rabbis are not supposed to talk to women. Oh my goodness. But Jesus, once again, he lets that go. And then it gets even worse because the Jews and the Samaritans are at odds with each other. And yet Jesus lets that go as well. Sometimes we put people in a box. You say these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. We do different things to divide. Division seems to be endless in our world. Now we have another war going on in our world, and we just think, when is this all going to end? And it's because we really have lost sight that we depend on God. And that, why did God create us? Why are we part of this universe? God created because God wanted to share God's life with us. This is what Jesus is doing in the gospel reading, is he's sharing this living water, this divine life with this woman. And this transforms her life. She is able to go back to her community. She leaves her jar at the well because she is going to be part of the community once again. In other words, we ought to always be empowered to be a part of a community, to be a part of a group of people who can let things go so we can allow divine life to flow in our hearts and through our hearts. Now, as we gather around the table, Lord, we gather to worship in spirit and in truth. The truth is, every time we come to Eucharist, we celebrate God's eternal love for us as we enter into the death and resurrection of Christ. And then also we are reminded and we are refreshed that we are to be people of good news. Violence begets violence. We know that. We can witness that every time we watch the news. But yet, grace will also give birth to grace. Simple acts of kindness will give birth to simple acts of kindness, and how important that is. And so may we be strengthened by the body and blood of Christ as we have been satisfied, so that we can be instruments of God's goodness for our world.